righty, Frank, I think it's
Oh.
over to you. We're ready to go.
Okay, great. I'm going to call to order a regular meeting of the Saratoga Springs Public Library Board of Trustees. It's January 10th, 2022. Welcome, everybody. I would like to mention that Jean Fay has joined us. I'd like to just give a shout out to Jean. I'm hoping that later on in this meeting, we can appoint her as a trustee to the board. I'd also like to take something out of order. I'd like to first allow Marvin and Company to inform us about the results of their financial audit. I believe Carol Hausman is here, and she's going to speak to that.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carol Hausman, and I have Jen Menard here with me. Jen and I worked on the audit of the library for the year ended 6/30/21 this year, and we're going to run through our results and our required communication to those charged with governance. So I'm going to share my screen and walk through. This is our AUC 260 letter, and really it's a required communication to the board explaining the audit process and some of the required communications after we've completed that audit process. So management is responsible for the selection and the use of appropriate accounting policies. And in the current year, there were no changes in the accounting policies. There were no new standards issued that the library had to follow. We noted no transactions entered into by the library during the year for which there wasn't authoritative guidance, and all significant transactions were recognized in the proper period. All financial statements have accounting estimates, and they're an integral part of the financial statements. In your instance, you have a few significant estimates, and they relate to your pension plan and the liabilities relating to that pension plan, as well as your post-retirement benefits. And we'll go into those numbers in a little bit. We did evaluate the key factors and assumptions used by management in determining that accounting estimates were reasonable in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. The financial statements are, the disclosures included them are neutral, consistent, and clear. We had no difficulties in performing the audit. The audit went very well. We were given the information we needed timely. The management team responded timely to our requests. We did have some adjustments we made to correct the financial statements, and they really related for the most part to certain accruals that weren't recorded. You'll see them on the screen, basically just to correct for the prior year adjustments that weren't posted, to record some payable adjustments, to adjust off some CIP, construction in progress, and also to move some revenue to refundable advances because it was a construction grant that was not earned yet. So it was moved in the financial statements from revenue into refundable advances. We had no disagreements with management. Management did provide representation to us that they made all the information necessary for us to complete our audit available to us, and that information was complete, accurate. They made us aware of anything we needed to know relating to subsequent events and that type of thing. And there really weren't any other audit findings or issues to address in this letter. So that is the required communication. And then I'm going to go through Jen is going to cover the management letter findings, but I'm going to run through some of the items on the financial statements themselves. I'm going to go pretty quick. We've got your auditor's report, and management is responsible for the financial statements. Our responsibility is to audit that. We assess risk. We talk to management about the internal controls that are in place. We perform tests. We don't look at 100% of the activity, but we evaluate how much evidence we need in order to be able to reduce our risk and present and issue our opinion on the financial statements. As we believe that the audit evidence that we gathered and obtained was sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. And on the next page, you'll see our opinion is an unmodified opinion, which is the financial statements present fairly in all material respects. The financial position of the governmental activities in each major fund of Saratoga Springs as of the year ended June 30th, 21, and the respective changes in financial positions for the year then ended. So unmodified opinion. If we walk through, you'll see the next section is really management discussion and analysis. And this is prepared by management to give you an overview of the financial statements and as well as some considerations relating to the future. If you look at what page is it? It's page 9 of the financial statements. You'll see the statement of net position. And this statement presents all of the assets and liabilities on the accrual basis for the library. And this is really an entity-wide statement. And there were a few variances from the prior year. You'll see your cash went up significantly, and that's really due to that your expenses are down about $1 million from the year before. If you walk down to the refundable advances, that $202,000, it was a capital grant that the library received but didn't expend yet. And then you'll see a big change in your net pension liability. It went from 1.8 million to 5,000, but at the same time, the deferred inflows for that pension went up $1,722,000. So much of that was a wash. The deferred inflow really represents the difference between the projected and the actual earnings on pension investments. And those numbers are provided by New York State from a report that was audited by auditors, and a statement was issued. In general, the total net position is up $470,000, and that's your excess of revenue over expenses for the year. Now, if you look at your statement of activities, I had mentioned that your expenses were down about $1 million, and $265,000 of that was salaries, just based on hours of operation being down. And your there was also an $880,000 swing in pension expense, and that's taking those assumptions and recording them in the deferred inflows and outflows and adjusting the accrual, and that all flows through your pension expense, and it actually swung that $800,000 from the prior year. Your general revenues are consistent with the prior year, no big changes. Your real property taxes, you're all aware, are pretty consistent. Okay, moving along. You'll see that on bear with me. On page 12, you'll see a balance sheet, and this is your governmental funds, and it really highlights more your current position. So when you think about your cash flows and your needs, your current needs, this is really more reflective because it doesn't include your long-term liabilities such as the pension and the other post-retirement benefits. And when you look at the fund balance there, you can see that you've have a very strong 5.3 million fund balance, most of which is unassigned. Moving on to the notes to the financial statements. I'm going to just highlight a few of these now. We had mentioned that there were no changes in the accounting standards that were followed in the current year, but we did list the future changes in accounting standards that may be applicable to the library going forward. And again, when I look at these and the relationship to the library, I don't think any of them are going to have a significant impact. I would say that Statement 87 on leases, it's going to be in place for next year, and that just requires all of your operating leases to be recorded as a right to use asset with a liability on the financial statements. So it is probably going to take some time to work up those items, but at this point, I don't think, and Ike, you can correct me, I don't think you have a lot of operating leases in play.
No, I think you're correct. I think it's primarily photocopier leases is probably the primary.
Yeah,
And you do have to consider where you're the lessee and the lessor. So just keep that in mind, Ike, for when you're looking at this.
yeah.
Correct. So for the other areas in the library where we are the lessor, including the Friends space,
Right.
cell phone antenna space.
So what we have done is put together some information for you to look at. I did not send that out yet. I figured we'd get through this. And then there's some tools out there. And it's really a matter of, first of all, gathering your lease information and then going from there. But we can work with you on that information. And the other ones I don't feel are going to have any significant impact on your organization. Moving on, I wanted to highlight in your cash and your deposits. You'll see that you did have bank balances of 4.9 million, and those were covered by either deposit insurance, but most of it was collateralized by securities held by banks, agents in the library's name. So you're in good shape there. Moving on, we always seem to target the pension because it's a significant estimate. And if you look at page 31, you'll see that the library's contributions, which would be your cash flow going out, were only 280,000 in the current year. Your the assumptions used are listed here, and you'll see your pension expense that what flowed through the financials as pension expense was 136,000 in the current year and 629,000 in the prior year. So that's where you see those swings with the accruals and the deferred inflows and outflows. We always like to point out that a significant estimate can change significantly based on the changes in the assumptions. And if you look at one of the required disclosures is the sensitivity of that pension liability to the discount rate assumptions. So you can see that in the current year, the liability is only 5,800. Now, remember last year it was 1.8, and that's mostly due to the swing in the discount rate. And you'll see here that if the discount rate increased 1%, the liability would go up significantly. If it decreased 1%, it would go down significantly. That is similar to the disclosures relating to your other post-employment benefit, which is your other significant estimate. And that's on page 38. You'll see that the liability, the OPEB liability changed. Here we go. In the current year, there was very little change in it. And that's because the actuary did a 2-year valuation. So there was no change in your assumptions in the current year related to that liability. However, if you look at the sensitivity to the discount rate, you'll again see that big swing that can occur with the 1% change. And what you have in play with the OPEB liability is you also have the sensitivity to healthcare cost trends. So that's also disclosed there. 1% change can really have a significant impact on that liability. Lastly, as part of our audit, we consider subsequent events, and there were no, management did evaluate subsequent events from 6/30/21 through the date of issuance of January 4th, and there were no disclosures or amounts that needed to be recorded relating to subsequent events. And again, contingencies, this note continues to be in the financial statements. You know, I guess the pandemic is evolving, turning into more of a, I guess, a day-to-day fluid situation, but it does impact organizations significantly, and we'll have to see how that plays out. So that is really the financial statements. Before Jen presents our management letter findings, does anybody have questions on those? Okay, Jen, I'm going to call up your management letter.
Okay.
Hold on.
All right, so as Carol had mentioned, every year we look at your internal controls as part of the audit process. And then should we come across any issues, there are 3 different levels of a finding that we could have. The highest level is a material weakness. And that, you know, is really the one where it's a little bit more of a concern, because if the items weren't fixed, you would have financial statements that were not materially stated correctly and fairly. And then the next level down is a significant deficiency. So a little less in severity than a material weakness, but a little more in severity than just an other comment. We didn't come across any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies during our audit, which is fantastic. That's always great when we don't have those. We did have a couple of other comments and other matters. And I do want to point out that this letter is a whole page shorter than it was last year. So we did remove some findings. So we always like when that happens. So our first finding is adjustments related to cash to accrual. So the library on a day-to-day basis operates under the cash basis of accounting, but your financial statements have to be under the accrual basis of accounting. So every year when we come in, there are certain entries that have to be done to get you to that accrual basis of accounting. And this really just kind of goes through what those entries were that we needed to make. So nothing that was really out of the norm here. So those were pretty routine. And then our other finding So this really results as a vacancy in the HR position. So the executive director has administrative user rights for the payroll website. And again, this is listed as an other comment, and it's listed as an other comment because there were compensating controls in place that did not elevate this to a significant deficiency or a material weakness. So that's the positive side of that. So our recommendation is just that the executive director doesn't have those administrative user rights, but obviously this was a result of a vacancy in a pretty key position. So that was, that was pretty understandable as to why this happened, but we recommend that those rights be removed as soon as you have somebody in that position. And I do want to just echo what Carol had said, that management is always fantastic to work with, very pleasant, timely in getting us items that we request, and that's very much appreciated.
So that's our report. Does anybody have questions or comments? Just want to say thank you, Ben, and we appreciate working with your team. And we were very, very pleased with our findings this year.
Well, thank you. And I wanted to say a special note of thanks to Denise Feltes, who I think this was her first experience with the complete audit. So Denise, thank you for everything you did through this process.
Thank you, Carol and Jen.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Mike?
Yes.
So on the heels of that, about the administrative user rights,
Yes.
Has that been done?
Not yet. We're working on it. We're getting Kelly up to speed with everything that she needs to be able to do in our payroll software. And as soon as we get to that point, then we'll hand over the reins entirely.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions? If not, we'll move back to the regular agenda. First item of business would be the approval of the minutes of the December 2021 regular meeting.
This is Terry. I would move approval.
I only had one change. On the second page, it says special committee reports. I think that was department reports.
I think you're correct. That is actually department reports rather than board committee reports.
But with that change, I would move to accept the minutes. Opposed. Do I have a second?
This is Terry. I second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we are at the approval of expenditures. Approval of the December prepaid checks. 69537 to 38, 69621 to 22, and 69624 to 25, totaling $1,289.25. We also have the January warrant checks, 69626 to 69698, totaling $122,000, $286,000.74.
This is Katie. I move to approve the expenditures.
This is Janet. I second that.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, those reports are, those expenditures and the warrant checks are approved, which takes us to the financial reports, which include the December prepaids and the January summary, warrant summary sheet, which we just reviewed, along with the budget report and the income report.
You're looking for a motion? I move to approve those. Janet?
I'll second. This is Heather.
Okay, if there's no other comments, then everyone in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, those reports are accepted. We also have to, I guess, is it the action required on this to accept the gift of $250?
It is, yes.
Okay. I move that we accept the gift of $250 in memory of Tom Kirschner.
This is Katie. I second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. The president's report, I don't have anything to address this meeting right now. Do we have any public comment?
No, sir, we don't.
And do we have any correspondence or communication?
No, again.
We are up to the Ike Pulver report.
Okay. Alrighty, I didn't know if there were any questions about my written report. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions or potentially some discussion as we come to talk about the policy proposals included in the packet. But the big news is about a reopening status. We are now open our full complement of 70 hours per week, weather permitting, and as long as we're able to continue to carry on given the current status with the health emergency. We do have a plan in place to potentially scale back services if we are unable to maintain a staffing level that's appropriate to open the building safely. And that would primarily be scaling back, starting with services on floors other than the main floor. Our goal would be to maintain the first floor open so that people would be able to come in and pick up holds, and we would be able to retrieve materials from outlying parts of the building if necessary. But for now, we are able to maintain staffing at each of the service areas on all of the floors throughout the building in order to stay open, but are very carefully watching positivity numbers and numbers internally. We have had a number of staff members who have had situations where they've required isolation or quarantine and not been able to report to work. But we are, like I say, for the time being, able to carry on and hope to continue to be able to do so. We have opened up our meeting room request form again. So groups are able to begin to request meeting rooms. And we have started scheduling some in-person programs, but have a plan in place where, again, when it's necessary because of the health emergency situation, to pivot those programs to being online. And just for programs that we have scheduled over the next week or so, including a program that's happening at this very moment, our song swap program, or this very evening, and some programs planned this weekend for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Those have all been switched over to being virtual programs, just to be able to maintain.
So is there a firm date that you're planning to give access to the meeting room for these events?
Yeah, I mean, we've already surpassed that. It's based on, but there isn't. So people have been able to use the meeting rooms on a walk-in basis since October. The date for reopening the application procedure for groups to begin to make their request happened at the beginning of this month. And so we're evaluating each of those on a case-by-case basis as they come in. And so far, there are very few of those. But the portal for groups to register and to begin the request process is reopened.
Would you say the traffic is generally pretty light in the
I
library?
would yes, I would say yes, that's the case.
Like since the concern came up in the staff members message that I communicated to the board, could you say something about how staff are prepared for enforcing the masking requirement?
The approach that we've taken for enforcing the masking requirement is that it's an all hands on deck posture that we've taken. So it's up to everyone. We're not, we're taking if you see something, say something approach. And so all staff are empowered and required to enforce the policy, which, and we have taken the stance that if everybody is on board, we're all a unified front, then that won't necessarily minimize confrontation when we have people who don't want to abide, but it certainly gives us solidarity and enforcement. Staff have access to any number, and many have taken advantage of currently and over the course of time, any number of opportunities for training in de-escalation procedures and in dealing with difficult people, et cetera. And those are skills which should be applicable in any kind of situation where there's potential conflict. And staff are informed about those opportunities and about the all hands on deck approach that we've taken in terms of enforcement.
It was especially the latter that I was concerned about. I understand the policy and I approve of the policy of universal responsibility, but I didn't know. I know that there are training programs that staff have done in the past with regard to de-escalation.
Right.
But I didn't know if that was a continuing resource.
Those, yes, they are true. Those are, well, there are any number of options available to staff for those things. What there is not, which staff may be wanting for any kind of situation where there's potential for conflict, there is no training that's specific about how to approach somebody in violation of our masking policy. I mean, there's no standard script that we've given people. We do talk about and regularly in our all staff meetings and in department meetings, there's lots of brainstorming about best ways to approach this and what we might say in a particular instance. But there is no one size fits all script that staff are given for this particular situation.
Is this happening a lot, like where they're coming into the library, like where the greeter is? Is that where it's occurring?
I think that's where it happens mostly. And I would still say that the vast majority of people that are visiting the library are in compliance with all of our policies. There are a handful of people who need regular reminders, but they're really in the minority of people. We are working as a leadership team with most of the people who are in the meeting here for developing exactly what I just described, kind of a standard way that staff would be able to respond to this. And also when there are regular violations of the rule, that it's recognized as what it is, a regular violation of the library's code of conduct, which might have some consequence to it, like potentially asking somebody to leave the building if there are repeat offenses, and figuring out a way that we can document that and deliver the message with as soft a blow as possible, but one that requires compliance. Because as I mentioned earlier, at the beginning of my report, we really are in a situation where we do have a number of staff members who have been required to quarantine or isolate, and our staffing level is relatively skeletal at the moment. So we are in a position where we need to enforce in order to protect the safety of everybody, in order to continue to provide the service that we would like to the public.
Can I follow up with something too, just with the training?
Sure, Jen.
I just wanted to mention to the board members too that the homeless training series with Ryan Dow that the Friends have paid for us is really wonderful. And he has, not specifically on masking, but he does deal with COVID-19 problem behaviors in a public space. So that's one that we have access to. And I believe the board may have access to those as well. So that's a great one to check out.
Thanks, Jen. I suppose we'll talk more about this when we get to the HR piece about the proposed change to the guidelines. Did you want to say, you have anything about Saratoga Reed?
I'm not sure what you mean oh, you mean the proposed policy about vaccination requirements?
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and yes, and there will be, I'm sure, some discussion about that. But I did want to say also that Saratoga Reads, the voting is in, and the Overstory by Richard Powers was it slightly edged out the Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett as the selection for 2022. The good news is that it's in print and available, and so we don't have to fudge any of the votes to make that our focus for the Saratoga Read season. And I think that it's a very programmable book. I think there's a lot to discuss and a lot of programs around which, a lot of themes around which we can build a programming season. And then I think the civil service job specification, the request to add that to our complement of potential employees, maybe that can come later as part of the new business as well.
Okay.
Terry, did that address your concerns?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Jennifer Ferris.
I have nothing to add except for I found a typo in my report that's now bothering me that I missed it, but there's a
There was talk. There was talk.
Checkouts and renewals, the comma needs to move over one.
Okay.
Otherwise, if anyone has any questions.
So anybody 13 or older can just self-register for a library card?
It's coming soon, but yes, there is criteria. You have to be 13 years of age and older, and you have to live in the 8 counties that serve MVLS cells. And then your address also has to be on file with the post office, which can be tricky with all these new homes that go in. So some new to the area people might not be able to register immediately. But we're excited to have this work out.
Yeah, that would be great if you could sign them up young.
Jen, it was nice to see the recovery of the numbers, though, that your little table up there at the top. I mean, the difference between January and December, it was nice to see that many more people are coming through the doors again.
Yeah. We're not where we were before, in 2019, but definitely you can even see the summer was nice and busy, which was nice to see.
Thanks, Jen. Catherine?
Not much else to add. I mentioned Saratoga Reads. Saratoga Reads Junior. We're reading El Defo, and last I checked, there was only about 20 spots left to register. So it's been very popular again this year. We're very excited. We're trying to, just like everywhere else in the library, we're trying to bring back some things slowly, but stay safe.
Any questions for Catherine? Okay, if not, thank you, Catherine. Jennifer O.
Hi, I don't have a whole lot that's new in my report either, except I did want to point out Rona Koreski, who retired from the library several years ago, does wonderful travel programs for us. And I got to fill in for Chris on one of them with the Riding the Rails, Welcome to Slow Travel. And it was actually a really nice getaway while we can't go anywhere. So her programs really are amazing. And I was fortunate to help host that one. And the other big thing I just wanted to mention is that with this December, Lori Lease retired full-time and she's staying on part-time. So I'm particularly grateful to her for that and all of the things she shared with me about Omeka and learning more about local history. And so I hope to look forward to doing that more and also getting to work with her even part-time. So I think that's about it, unless you have any questions.
And for those not in the know, Omeka is the digital platform. It's the platform for scanning and uploading and adding metadata to our.
I don't know what it was either when I was
Yeah, I was interested to see the mention of, I think it was a Syracuse student who was preparing a report on repurposing the cafe space. Am I correct about that?
I know Trevor was working with a Syracuse student. I can't remember the details, to be honest, right now. I'd have to look at the report again.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Has that report been submitted or is it in progress?
I don't believe we've had it. Yeah, we haven't received a report, so I can follow up with Trevor to see if he can get it from the student.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like an interesting topic.
Yeah. He's a great mentor too, Trevor, so it was a good fit for sure.
That says the final report. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rick?
Well, as you see, all our parking lot lights are LED now. So that was a thank you to the city electrician. He was very kind to us, doing a little extra few things that may help make our life easier, and we're going to benefit greatly. We identified a couple street lamp poles in certain areas, and it's due to age and potentially getting pushed by vehicle bumpers. But we have two lights that, will have to be re-anchored in the spring, but he agreed to help us with that also. So overall, win-win. And our new MERV filters are here. So in addition to the additional units, we should be in great shape on air quality. Any other questions?
I had a question, Rick. Is the staffing COVID related, or are you just needing to do some hiring?
In order to hire, you have to get applications, and we are struggling. We are really struggling to get applications, for qualified people. In fact, I will say it's not in this report, but the building monitor we just hired already resigned. So we are struggling. And yes, I'm working more nights and weekends.
Have you tried Indeed? Are you using Indeed?
Kelly's not-
Basically, I've been working with
Yes,
Kelly.
it's on Indeed.
Yeah,
It is, okay.
yeah. So, and the answer to your question, Katie, is it's a mixture of a lot of things. So it's people who have resigned, and then when we have had a few people from the operations department who've had to quarantine or isolate, and then given the already slim staffing, it does create an extra burden for Rick.
And he's still smiling. And
instead.
We
Through the
Not
appreciate
really.
you, Rick. We appreciate you.
Any other questions for Rick? Thanks, Rick. Okay, that takes us to Kelly.
My one update was what Rick said about our new building monitor resigning. As far as the job postings, I was working today with the Saratoga County Chamber to try to get logged on to their job zone because I don't have any of the login stuff from Tara. So they're supposed to give me a call back tomorrow to get me all set with that. And then I can get the jobs posted there as well. That's the only update that I have. I'm sure there's lots of questions though about everything going on here.
And just a bit of clarification about the resignation of the building monitor who was here for just a couple days before he departed. He had a sort of a domestic situation that led to his departure.
Well, it's good to see that Lori has stayed on as a part-time librarian. You have a request to appoint?
Yep, Kate Federiconi, she's currently a part-time librarian one, and we'd like to appoint her to full-time librarian one for adult services.
Okay, I move that we appoint Catherine Federiconi, is that right?
Yes.
To librarian one, full-time adult services, effective January 17th, 2022. Do I have a second?
This is Becky.
second.
Yeah, I second. Oh, good.
We all second.
I heard Katie, I think. Katie, that second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. She's appointed.
And I know that'll make Jen O very happy, as well as Kate herself is very excited about.
I'm texting her right after this to say it's official.
Okay.
Okay, so you attached to, I guess, to your report is the job spec for the archivist position?
Yes. Yep.
Which we're calling an archivist position. Does that need board action, Ike?
It does, because what the action would be at this point, it hasn't made its way through the Civil Service Commission yet, but at the moment, it's not even on a list of job specifications that would apply to the library. So what it would be, the action would be simply to add it to as a library job specification. And the purpose for doing this is that it gives us maybe one more candidate pool to choose from when we're selecting a person for the job in the Saratoga room. As I said in my report, that job has been filled variously over time by people who met the criteria for local historian, librarian 1, and librarian 2. And the archivist gives us just one more route to potentially have someone come into that position.
I like that idea.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this something that's also has to go on the list for testing for civil service?
It does, yes.
Okay.
And the way it stands now, there is no list for it. There's no current list for this position. There's no current list for local historian.
Right.
And the canvas of there's no real viable candidate on the current librarian 1 list or librarian 2 list.
Right.
And so this would give us an opportunity to potentially appoint someone provisionally.
Yeah.
Right.
Schedule.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And
I'm sorry, Kelly, I should have left that to you.
Nope, that's fine.
Okay.
And I do have one small update with this. I spoke with Carissa, the Civil Service Commission today, and she's taken our edits and pushed it through to the commission. So they have their meeting on the 26th in the morning, which I have to attend. And that's where they sort of look it over and approve it. She said there should really be no issue. It's pretty straightforward. So that's the 26th for the commission.
Has everyone had a chance to review this?
So I make a motion to approve the change to the archivist position. This is Katie.
Second, Terry.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
So I do have some questions, Kelly, about the draft for the vaccination and testing policy.
Okay.
I was trying to pull it up on my computer to see, there were some spots that were kind of highlighted and you were going to put in some more information.
Right. Those are sort of just the questionable sections that we don't really have a straight answer for yet.
Right. So one of mine was the testing piece of, are you, I think you said in there that you're not going to be able to, it's going to have to be testing done somewhere else, not at home tests.
Right. Yes.
And
It has to be a
so
PCR test.
has to be PCR test. And so
Yeah.
therefore, will it be their responsibility? It will therefore be their responsibility to pay for the test, is my assumption.
That's yes, that we are not required to pay for the testing.
Right. And right, like right now, there is such a delay in getting results of testing.
Yeah.
So, I guess I was wondering how that part comes in. If people have to test every 7 days, but you're waiting 4 to 5 days as it is right now, potentially, to get a PCR result, then are you right back into when, you know, like how do we kind of write those things into the policy?
I mean, Ike and I were kind of talking about this the other day, that if you, how OSHA has it, if you don't have your test back in time, you cannot report to work. So what kind of accommodations can we give? Is there remote work that they can do? Can they take a sick day, or can they go unpaid? We have to sort of work out what we want to do in that instance, because OSHA is, you know, they're pretty strict on, if I don't have their test from them, they can't come to work.
Right, and that's the reason, I mean, for lots of logical reasons, it exists as that.
Right.
It's unusual, I think, for them to take as long as they happen to be taking right now.
Right.
Yeah, that may change hopefully in the next few weeks or a couple of months at least. This is still a working document, right?
Yeah.
And we're
Yes. Yeah.
still waiting to hear from the Supreme Court, I guess, as to whether or not that this mandate is going to stay in place.
Right.
Which is, you know, in my report is one of the fundamental questions is, do we, you know, and we've drafted the policy as if it is the case that we want to wait until there's a mandate, until we have such a requirement, but are we in agreement with that principle? Because there are plenty of employers who do have a requirement for testing or vaccination with or without a mandate, you know, despite the lack of a clear mandate at this point. So we're operating under the assumption, I think we have some general agreement, at least among the management team, that we would prefer not to have such a requirement in place unless there is a mandate for it, because of the philosophy that we would like to give people as many options as we can while still preserving the health of the workplace. But it is one of those questions.
I like this approach, and I'm glad to see that we have a working draft ready as circumstances may change.
Right.
I'm also, you know, I'm not going to be surprised if in a very short period of time, they are going to change that fully vaccinated to really requiring the booster, since the CDC guidelines right now change whether you've had the booster or you haven't had a booster. So I guess one of my questions was, are you tracking that level of people's vaccination status for contact tracing purposes? Since I would imagine you're likely the one doing contact tracing, since they can't seem to keep up with that these days either.
Right. We
So-
haven't, go ahead, Ike.
No, go ahead, Kelly.
I was gonna say, we haven't formally asked all of our employees for their vaccine cards yet. However, we have, anytime they take COVID vaccination leave to go get their shot, whether it's their first one, second one, or their booster, we require their card as proof that they got their shot in that instance. So I do have, a handful for that reason. But Ike and I have not gone forward with formally asking everybody for their card for the OSHA mandate yet.
Is it a question for the attorneys? I mean, this I know was a legal question before in general of whether you can even ask an employee for that information.
If the OSHA mandate goes into effect, we have to.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And advice that we have from the attorneys is that there's nothing that's a violation of HIPAA or anything related to that for asking people for their vaccination status.
Right.
Either employers or members of the public. So for the time being, there's nothing prohibiting us from doing
Right. It's something I would, even though the OSHA, the ETS it's actually, I think it actually went into effect today. I know it's in the Supreme Court and there's still a lot of stuff going on with it, but we are not at 100 employees yet, but I feel like we will be,
Right.
So what that means, as soon as we hit 100 employees, I have to have all that information ready to go. So if OSHA contacts me, I have 4 hours to get them that information. So I need to have it already. I can't be scrambling to collect vaccine cards when they call me.
Right. So, and I think, Katie, our approach likely would be for people who are not able to provide on-demand test results, because nobody really can do that. The test results that are required to meet this criteria is that I think our approach would be, if there is work for them to do remotely and we have the ability to open without their presence, then we would provide them with the ability. I mean, it's the question about what, if there isn't any work for them to do remotely, then the question is it unpaid leave? Do we allow them to take some paid time off benefit that they might have accrued? Then it could potentially have an impact on our ability to open, because without the test result, they're not able to report to work. And then that would trigger some other internal policy about finding a replacement for them if it's necessary in order to open, or scaling back our services because we don't have the staff in place.
Right.
That's where it gets tricky. But I think our first thing would be to allow them the first two options, to if they have the ability to, and there is work for them to do remotely while they're awaiting the test result, to allow that to happen. And if they have a paid time off benefit accrued, to allow them to use that while they're awaiting the test result. I think those, and then the final option would be the unpaid time off.
Right. Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, it's very tricky.
I agree with you though, Kelly. It does make sense that you get as many of the pieces in place because of that tiny window. I mean, you don't even see, they won't even necessarily be reporting to work on the day that you need the cards or whatever, right?
So I need to make sure that Ike has access to it, and whoever else here needs to have access. So in case I'm not here, somebody else can get that to them.
Right.
And so that's why you'll see at the beginning, where we've drafted it, we've put in lots of, sort of squishy things about, rather than, the template from OSHA left a spot for a date. And of course, we can't say a date certain because we don't know when it will actually go into effect, because that is, tied to our reaching this threshold of 100 employees. So we've tried to calculate based on when someone might be considered fully vaccinated under the current criteria.
Does anybody know off the top of their head, since New York City just passed their own, I think it's for much smaller businesses with,
No.
way fewer employees. I thought, do you know? Because it's possible the state could step in and do it instead.
I don't know the exact number. I know it's much stricter in terms of size, number of employees.
Mhm.
I don't know the number though off the top of my head now.
Well, I guess if it comes up fast, then you'll just call a special meeting, right? I mean, if you need to, for us to approve some kind of policy.
That's correct. I think we're a ways off from reaching that 100-person threshold, and that's like unlikely to happen before we have our next regular meeting. But anything is possible.
I would think that the court would try to issue a decision relatively soon.
That's
and not hold it for months. So
right, and that's what we're kind of relying on, and then we can hold off, or we have a little bit of time if we're all on board with the decision that having this policy in place is dependent upon a mandate to do so. So we wouldn't be looking at a vaccination or testing policy in the event that there's not a mandate that we have such a policy.
I think there was some skepticism among court watchers about whether the court was going to allow this to stand.
Right.
But who knows?
Right. All righty.
Does anybody else have any thoughts about this draft? Okay.
And as I say, it's shared with you now just to get it on your radar as something that we may have to take
I really appreciate that.
relatively fast action.
It's a good idea. Is there anything else under Kelly's domain?
I think that's it.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay. Old business, we've done that. I don't think we're dealing with suggested changes in any bylaws, right? That's
correct. Yep.
That's a holdover. Reopening status you've discussed.
Yep.
And we've come to the appointment of Jean Fay to the Board of Trustees. Ms. Capelli, do you have any motion you would like to make?
The motion to approve Jean Fay, appoint her to the Board of Trustees.
Second.
And that was a second from Heather there.
Yes.
All in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Congratulations, Jean, you're appointed. I'm just thrilled that you're on our board. Just seeing your resume and your life experience and your community service record is I know you'll be such a great asset to our board, and I really appreciate your service joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope I can make a difference. And I've always admired the library, and so I'm very happy to be able to serve it, and I hope I can do so well. So thank you.
Thank you, Jean. And Jean, we'll need to make an arrangement probably with you, me, and Denise maybe to come in and administer an oath of office and
Okay.
and do the paperwork that's needed to
Yeah. I thought that maybe I had to go around and collect signatures.
not this time, not for the appointment, but so the way that this is working, just to clarify for everyone what the process is that the appointment The vacancy now allows the board to appoint someone to fill that vacancy until the next election cycle, which will be coming up in April. And then prior to the April vote, then there will be a petition required to get you onto the ballot for the
But
5
your term that you're stepping in for, Manita's term, that doesn't end until June 30th.
Okay,
And then if you would like to run, Ike will be distributing that information about petitions and the dates, the deadlines for that.
Right.
perfect.
And believe it or not, it's coming up in fairly short order, even though our year goes until June, our budgeting season and our election planning season begins right about now. So,
Okay, excellent. Well, call me anytime. Thank you.
all right.
Thank you, everybody.
I think that takes care of our regular agenda. I would like, is there anything else that you have, Ike?
There is not. Nope.
Then I'm going to make a motion that we move into an executive session to discuss a particular personnel matter. Do I have a second?
I second that. This is Katie.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
So,
opposed? That motion carries.
and Ike, I think you're going to give me co-host status.
I am, I think what we're going to do at this point is stop the live streaming and the recording, give everyone, except for the trustees and Don and me, an opportunity to leave. And then I think at that point, Don can turn the hosting over to you so that the two of us can step out.